Hey everyone, welcome to another issue of Jay and Bax's Expensive Paper. So happy to have you here with us and hanging out for another fun packed conversation. Today we've got a special guest. We have Jason from Archivist, Adrift.
Or
He
is it
is
archivist?
archivist. There's debate over how to pronounce that. He specializes in conservation of comic books. So we'll be getting into his journey, how he got started in collecting and conserving comics. We'll also get into some of the fun details of the difference between conservation and restoration. So make sure to stay tuned. Hey, Jason.
Hi
Welcome.
there. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. It was very kind of you guys. Yeah.
Yeah,
We appreciate it too.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Pleasure to have you.
Yeah, for sure.
So
let's jump right in, Jason.
Okay.
What's your journey? How did you get started into comics and then
Yeah.
did the turn into conservation?
Right.
And then we'll explain a little bit between the difference between that and restoration. And I
Yeah.
don't know if even preservation is a different thing, but we'll let you explain.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, I got into comics probably. I didn't get into comics when I was really young. Hey Matt. But I'm comics were in the house. I think maybe here and there, but I didn't really get into comics until I was a teenager when my cousins. I lived on the East Coast and we used to visit my cousins every year who lived in the Midwest. And one year I went to their basement and they had full runs of Claremont X-Men and Simonson Thor and all the cool 80s, late 70s, mid 80s stuff. And I was like, this is amazing. This is really cool. And they're like, yeah, and it's actually kind of worth something too. And I'm like, what? Why? And they're like, yeah, well, it's collectible and whatnot. I was like, wow, this is great. I mean, before that, I collected baseball cards a little bit, maybe, and like garbage pail kid cards and things like that. So I was like, I got right away. I got the bug. I jumped into Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, and things like that. In fact, one of my earliest books, I think a book that you guys would appreciate was this one. So
yeah.
I know this was part of your guys' like journey, and so wanted to bring my own. There you go. There you go. Of course, I had to get this one as well. So,
Nice.
and the Black Suit Saga I think was big at the time. And then Todd McFarlane and the whole Image crew had come up and all that. And but I think by the end of the 90s, when all the hype kind of started dying down from the whole kind of collector bubble, the stories weren't as great as I remembered, and the artwork was kind of spastic and extreme and all that. And I think probably by the late 90s, early 2000s, I kind of got out of comics a little bit. I never completely got out. I always had like one toe in, I was always kind of, if there was a comic book shop nearby, I'd run in and see what they had and maybe grab a book or something like that. By the time early 2000s, 99, I joined the military and I just kind of got out of collecting a lot right around then too. So, but I was hauling around these like boxes of comics everywhere I would move to, especially when I was in the Air Force, I'd have, my long boxes with me or, at my parents' house or something like that. And then right before COVID, I bought a house and I was like, you know what? I'm tired of hauling all these comics around. I don't think they're even worth anything. And I'm just tired of the whole thing, So I gave a bunch away to Goodwill, kept a few books that, like these that meant something to me, and then COVID happened and I got a stimulus check and I was like, and I started looking at some of the books I had kind of, kept. I'm like, these things are okay. They're doing pretty good right now, and maybe I can afford. I'm a big boy now. Maybe I can afford some of those comics that I always wanted when I was young and could never afford. So I kind of dipped my toe into some Silver Age stuff, which a bad time to do that. Right around that bubble, and so I got some Silver Age books. At the same time, I was really getting into a lot of YouTube channels on restoration, specifically on not comic book restoration or conservation, but painting. There's a channel called Baumgartner's Restorations, where it's a fine artist who takes fine art paintings, and they're very damaged paintings, and he brings them back to life. He kind of repaints them or touches them up using all conservation techniques, methods that can be completely removed or undone if in case better techniques come along. And I was just so blown away with that. My dad's a fine artist. I've always wanted to get into the arts. There was a plan to go to art school at some point in my life, and I just never really did it, but I was like, wow, this would be a really kind of cool path to get into. But at that point, I had already gotten into a career and all that, so it didn't seem like it was ever going to happen. But still living vicariously through this guy on YouTube. Then I found a few channels on YouTube, specifically Jerry the Jitterbug, who have you guys heard of him at all? Jerry the Jitterbug?
I don't think that's not ringing a bell for me.
Okay. He was, I'm not sure if he's the earliest, but he was one of the earliest people to really get into approaching basically conservation of comic books on YouTube. Now, there are other people who are doing pressing and cleaning for a while before that, which is, a great skill in of itself. But he was kind of doing more of an advanced version of that, where he was taking books and he was, really beat books, and he was pulling them apart and he was washing the pages. And I was like, what are you doing, dude? You're going to ruin those books, taking staples out and replacing them and all kinds of other things, and I'm like, wow, he's rebuilding these books. I didn't even know you could do that. And he was submitting them to CGC, sometimes getting a full universal grade, and sometimes getting a grade that came back something called conserved. And this was a whole new world to me. At the same time, he was also showing that you could buy Golden Age books for cheap. And that really impressed me, because in my mind, Golden Age books were untouchable. They were unobtainium. They were books that mere mortals don't buy Golden Age books. You're lucky if you can get a Silver Age book. So I was like, okay, I want to do what this guy's doing. I'm really interested in this. And at around the same time, I started noticing other channels that existed that were doing a lot of the same type of work. So, for instance, Liberty Hill Comics, where Dr. Paul Kosnick, he was doing some stuff. Flying L Comics with Captain Larry, Shelby Comics, a few other channels. And Dr. Paul Kosnick, he actually had a Facebook community of conservationists that he kind of like had pulled all these different conservationists together, and just to trade ideas and try to get techniques down. Professor Peter Alachi was another one. Experiments and experimentation and conservation, and then on the Instagram side, there were professionals who are doing this stuff as well, like Kenny Sanderson of Sanderson Studios, and Phil of Phantom Restoration. And so I just started asking a lot of questions, probably bugging a lot of people, and trying to figure out, how do I do this? I had a YouTube channel before that, but my YouTube channel is mostly made up of, I was really into what was called binaural audio, where I'd go to concerts and I would listen to, I had these headphones that I could put on, and you could hear like the surround sound around it. So I was kind of doing that a little bit. and then just miscellaneous stuff. And so I decided, you know what, let me dust off this old YouTube channel and let me see if I can, do something real with this, And so I just kind of just started doing it. So that's pretty much my comic journey as far as getting to conservation, at least.
So what was your first approach like?
So I think the first approach probably was the basics, which is cleaning and pressing.
Okay.
So dry cleaning, which involves using like a Pentel eraser or and some makeup pads, and cleaning up the books on the cover and throwing them into a t-shirt press, a hot press, and getting them all nice and sharp looking. And the wisdom was that you should really get this down sharply before you jump into like the big stuff. Do 100 books, that kind of thing. I was impatient. I felt like, no, I want to do this now. I want to get right into it. I did like 2-3 books, and I'm like, all right, let me get into the big stuff, So I jumped right, because I'm the kind of guy who, if I'm not fully involved in it, I just don't really have the interest. Now I should have done
feel the
that.
risk a little bit, right? Have some skin in the game.
Definitely
Yeah.
a lot of risk, and I probably would be less freaked out every time I work on a book had I done it the proper way. But it keeps you on your toes, so that's good. But I was going to practice on fairly affordable books anyways, and by fairly affordable, around the $25 range ish, or I did start off on like junk books, like dollar books or $5 books or things like that, but it wasn't long before I jumped into like the $25, $35, $50 book kind of area. And so that's how I jumped in at first. And so the evolution, I think, for me was going from pressing and dry cleaning to doing simple tear seals. So a tear seal is if you have a rip in your book or in your page or whatnot, you can use something called methyl cellulose. It's like a food grade, almost like a paste, and it's water soluble. And all the processes that I'm kind of steeped into, and this kind of might get us into the difference between restoration and conservation. All my processes are lean towards reversible. So going back to Baumgartner Studios, where he was doing the same kind of thing, all his processes were reversible. So yeah, tear seals, you take methyl cellulose and you take a brush, and then you take some really light, thin Japanese paper, and you kind of glue those on. And when it's done, hopefully you can't see the tear anymore, or see the material that you use to patch the tear. And so that was the first kind of step from pressing and dry cleaning. And so yeah, getting into, I don't know if you guys want to get into the differences between restoration and conservation as far as I see it.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
And from then I'll have a follow-up, because I've followed some of your definition, but after you kind of explain it, I'll have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Just prefacing it for now.
Yeah. So I should have brought it up. I didn't bring it with me, but there's actually a book by Dr. Paul Kosnick and Shelby, Dr. Shelby, about conservation. But essentially, restoration is the process. It is more interested in the visual aesthetics of a book, and often it gets there. It basically it's trying to return a book to how it originally looked, and it often gets there through processes that are not easily removable. Conservation is less interested in the cosmetics of the book and more interested in the preservation, the longevity of the book. And in doing so, the processes are mostly reversible. There are a few processes that are not, but mostly reversible. And so it's really almost kind of a different philosophy in approaching books. Now, I think the major grading companies, PSA, CGC, I believe that they consider conservation as almost kind of like a subcategory of restoration in a sense, but they do, of course, see a distinction. So when a book comes back from CGC, instead of getting a purple label, you'll get a blue label with a gray or silver, um, like I don't know, spacer at the top. PSA, I think they just kind of notate restored or conserved, but they do distinguish the difference.
Okay.
CBCS does the same thing.
Yeah, and that's probably a good segue into this question that we have about with your tear seals. Are you seeking blue labels or purple ones?
I'm never seeking a purple label. I don't want a purple label. Although I think a case could be made for restoration. I'm not trying to do restoration. So before all the slabbing companies kind of started coming around, there was, I think, two different views on restoration. There was a view that restoration, you would go to someone to get your books restored on purpose, for the visual appeal. There were some major master artists like Susan Saccone and her teacher, I can't remember his name, but even Kenny Sanderson, they're artists. The amount of work that they put into these books, it's beautiful when they're done. It's fine art. They get into, they take out paintbrushes and pixelate they get into the matrix of the comics, and it's gorgeous. The reason that restoration, I think, eventually got a bad name was because people were hiding flaws and then selling the books as universal, as never touched, as virgin, and when the slabbing companies came around and people thought that they had these pristine books, and come to find out the edges were trimmed, that there was paint all over them, they were a disaster. These books that they spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on were not worthless, but not worth nearly what they paid for them. And so there's been kind of almost an overreaction to that. So now, but conservation, which is what I'm kind of the field that I'm in, again, I'm not really interested in getting restored, although I may do a restored project someday in the future. I'm, again, more interested in that preservation of comics. And if I can get a blue label, if I can get a universal label, I want to shoot for that. And really, for the conservator, it really is a kind of a judgment call sometimes on whether or not the amount of work they do bridges that gap between universal or into conservation. And so there are certain techniques that you can go just so far with and just stop and say, okay, let me back off a little bit, and I don't want to get that conservation label. Conservation labels, books with conservation labels typically are more valuable and more desirable than a restored book, but still slightly less valuable than a universal.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So it makes sense. Maybe this is not the best analogy, but this is kind of how it helps in my head to picture the difference between conservation and restoration.
Mm-hmm.
I see restoration, like you mentioned, restoring something to how it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's kind of like cosmetic surgery, right? You do the plastic surgery, Botox, try to make something look pretty that's not that pretty anymore for some reason.
Right.
And with conservation, it's more like trying to get it functional again.
Yeah.
So more like an internal surgery, right? Like a rotator cuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to fix that so that you can still use your shoulder, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good analogy. I also like the analogy of like cars. There are people who are hardcore into car restoration, where they're maybe restoring a car by taking an old Camaro or something like that. Maybe they'll get a a different engine from a later model or a newer model or whatever, or they'll get they'll slap on a brand new, dashboard, or whatever. Whereas the conservation is like, okay, I want to keep the patina on the paint, and I want to make sure all the original parts are here. And if I can't get the exact original parts that came from this car, if I can get the original parts from a car from the same year and the same model, make all that kind of thing. So I would see kind of almost like that. That's kind of the view from my perspective of conservation and restoration for comics as well.
Yeah, so, that makes sense, but my question then is, and it's because I hear a lot the word reversible a lot in conservation.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important that's reversible? Because if you have that rotator cuff surgery, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to reverse it so that you don't use your arm later on.
Yeah.
So why is it important for that to be reversible?
Well, for two reasons. One, sometimes people they want that universal grade, and so they want their book to go back to how it was before it was conserved. I know that Kenny Sanderson, for instance, he worked on I think Batman 1, and brilliantly conserved this book. It was gorgeous after he was done with it. He did something called leaf casting on it, which is a process that I do as well, where I apply new paper to areas where there are voids in the paper. And he got a new seller, picked up the book and was like, I don't want this. Can you remove it? I just want to, I want it back to I don't care if it's a 0.5 blue label. That's what I want. Sure, I can do that. I can wash all this off. And he did. And so that's one reason. The better reason, in my opinion, is in the future, as better techniques come along, or safer techniques, for instance, I want to be able to reverse some of the things that I've done so that if better techniques come out, I can reapply those better techniques. So, if I'm doing something that holds the book together in a certain way, maybe there will be a better process to do that in the future that, is less damaging to the book. Or although the processes I use are not overly damaging to begin with, but, in case that happens.
So, just out of curiosity, since you've been doing this, how much has the landscape changed where better techniques have come out?
So much, so much. Like within the last year, so many different processes have evolved. A lot of them due to the experimentation of Professor Peter Alachi, who he works with paper professionally as a university professor. And also the work of Jerry, the Jitterbug, and even Paul Kosnick. So leaf casting has been around for a while, but that's kind of picked up more on the amateur level. But some processes that have evolved over the last year have included rust mitigation. So I can take out before, when you had rust on a book, your only real alternative was essentially to cut it out of the book, because if you didn't, then the rust would continue to migrate through the rest of the book, and you had to somehow stop that from happening. But through chemicals like evaporust, which is kind of like an organic, most of the stuff that we use is all organic. So evaporust, we found that we can reduce rust stains significantly, including removing most of the rust from the staples themselves, so that those staples can actually sometimes be reused. Another process that we're getting into right now is a process where currently a lot of us are using aqueous baths to clean filth off of comics, like a deep filth off of the comics, and to deacidify them as well, because these books have, when they were made in a process that introduced acids into the paper, which constantly chew at the paper. So your universal books that are sitting in their slabs, they're rotting in their shells unless they get deacidified. So eventually all books will need conservation at some point in their life, up to a certain age of the book. More modern books use acid-free paper, or they were printed on acid-free paper. but anything up to probably the early, I imagine, Copper Age, probably, or mid Copper Age, probably will need some sort of deacidification at some point in its lifetime. But anyways, so to deacidify pages, you need to put them through an aqueous bath that contains a calcium hydroxide or some sort of base to neutralize those acids. Well, Peter Alachi is currently working through a process where he's using a gelatin that you can rest the page on, the wrap on, and instead of dousing it with water or letting it swim in water, you're just slightly the gelatin it sits on, it kind of absorbs the acids, absorbs through into the gelatin itself, and it's less harsh, which is great for Silver Age books, because washing Silver Age books has always been really tricky, because you end up getting an issue with speckling and color loss, and that kind of thing. So this will hopefully, and it's proving to be the case, significantly reduce the issues with color loss, which is awesome, fascinating stuff.
And
Yeah,
it's really
this is chemistry.
fascinating.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
there's a whole science here that I didn't even
Oh,
ever
yeah.
consider, or like
And the thing
blowing
is,
my mind.
yeah, it's not, and the things that we're picking up are not coming from the comic book world. They're coming from the museum world. Museums have been doing these processes for ages with parchment, with books from the 19th century, and so we're mostly folks like Professor Peter Alachi and Dr. Paul Kosnick and Dr. Shelby. They're pulling from the academic research on this stuff. So there is bona fides on the stuff already. They're really working on a expert level and bringing it back down to us here on the comic book level, I guess you could say. So
Yeah, and some of it seems counterintuitive, right? Because we're always trying not to get our comic books wet.
yeah,
Yet you dump them into water or dump water in them, and to Chris's previous comment, the video that you did for Mon Comics,
yeah,
where you actually see the grime coming off the book, it's like washing
Yeah.
an old T-shirt.
yeah.
So
All those
it's
acids are sitting there.
amazing.
Yeah. So the thing though about the comic book paper is made in water. So you're essentially taking the paper back to its source in a sense. And so that's why, yeah, it seems counterintuitive. And when you spill water on a book, for instance, and you let it sit there and it gets all those water stains and all that, it's basically swirling around the dirt that's already on the page, and that's what's pretty much causing those stains. But when you fully submerge a page in clean water or an aqueous solution, which is basically, for me, it's filtered water with calcium hydroxide, and then I use a little bit of something called Triton X, which is a very mild detergent. Some people use actual detergent, but I don't. Anyhow, that it's you have to kind of know the books that you're working with. I wouldn't give an aqueous bath to every book. Again, Golden Age books can handle it a lot easier, because back then they were really coating these books with ink. I mean, really heavily. And so if you lift a little bit of ink, you can't notice it at all. But when you get into the Silver Age and certain specific Silver Age books, especially like Marvel, some DC, it becomes a lot trickier. And how long did it take me to perfect the aqueous bath technique? Probably, it's a hard question, because I think the first time I did it, I was successful and I had no issues. And the second time I did it, it was a complete disaster. And then the third time I did it, and you just kind of figure out, okay, I'm going to cut down the time. Initially, a lot of people were doing, I think, half an hour long aqueous baths. I don't keep a comic page in there. A wrap is what we call them, in an aqueous bath for more than 6 minutes total, which is like 3 minutes and then out, and then 3 minutes again. So I do 3 minutes with usually that mild detergent, and then I'll do another 3 minutes to rinse it. But if I see, I've gotten to the point now where if I see any kind of ink lifting off at all, and it's profuse, and I know the kind of book it is, I will pull it out as fast as I can. So you just kind of get a feel for it after a while. And again, it really has to do with the era of the book.
And going back to the perfecting, I think a lot of it is just experimenting and experience. Do you remember the first book you work in, and then the first big book that you were actually like, oh my God, I'm gonna work on this book. Like, I
Yeah.
better not screw the pooch here.
So just for dry cleaning and pressing, I worked on a couple of like cheap DC dollar books. One of them I worked on was a Vietnam War book, and I through that I really fell in love with the artist Sam Glansman, who I'd never heard of before, and now I'm like totally fascinated with. But one of the first books I actually worked on with an aqueous bath, and then after that, blue light treatment. Which is where you use blue light to kind of lighten up a page, a wrap, was actually not a comic book. It was a men's magazine from the early 1930s that had artwork by Karl Barks in it, and he was known for doing the good Donald Duck.
Okay.
His work is worth a lot of money for his duck books, not this thing. I got this thing for like, I think, I don't know, $15 on eBay. And I was like, well, and it was a mess. It was heavily water stained. It was black and white. So I thought that this would be a good way to kind of like really kind of feel out things, because I felt there was going to be less risk with that than with a full color book, and the results were night and day. I was astonished at the difference after doing the aqueous bath and then doing the blue light treatment. These deep, dark stains were almost completely lifted, and I was really impressed by that. But my first book that I was like, okay, now I'm stepping into the big thing here. Let me see if I can find it real fast. Yeah. It was this book. Contact Comics. Oops.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
There we go.
Came out in 1945, and what's significant about the book is that it is artwork by an artist named L.B. Cole. And in the Golden Age, there are several big artists. L.B. Cole and Alex Schomburg are the two biggest ones, I would say currently. Matt Baker is another big one, Lou Fine. But he was a big one. And it was also one of the earliest Golden Age books I bought as well. And so I really wanted to make sure I did everything. This thing was, when I got it, like it was so fragile. Like when I couldn't turn the page because it was like it was falling apart on me completely. It was just a mess. And so when I finally got finished with it, I felt like, oh wow, I did it. Now with this, all I did was I did tear seals, I did a dry clean, I did I don't think I had to remove any rust. And then I did an aqueous bath with it. I did some light bleaching with it as well. And I just wanted to not get a restored grade, when I sent it in, and anything above a 0.5 I was happy with, because this thing was fragile. It was not. So when I got 2.5, I was like thrilled. I was like, oh, thank God, at least
that's awesome.
Yeah. So.
It looks pristine. The colors really pop for a book from the mid 40s. It looks red, like it was printed yesterday.
Yeah.
That's a testament to your skills.
Congratulations
so,
on
good
that.
job.
Oh, thank you.
I'm curious too, and this was called out earlier about the video that you posted for Brandon's channel on Mon Comics, and I apologize if I completely butcher the techniques or the names, because
No, it's okay.
again, this is all new to me. So
Yeah.
I probably sound like an idiot, but you had like a putty that was like it's like a pulp fiber spread that you put over the spine.
Oh,
Kind of
okay.
bind it.
So
What is that about?
okay, so that's the leaf casting I was discussing.
Oh, the leaf
So
cast. Okay.
yeah, so leaf casting is essentially, there are books that have holes in them, and or complete spine splits or what have you, and so it's considered a form of conservation, and you will get a conserved grade for it. In fact, it was introduced by Matt Nelson and Kenny Sanderson. Matt Nelson, president of CGC, and Kenny Sanderson, they both. So Matt Nelson, the current president of CGC, he used to do conservation with Kenny Sanderson, and so they brought, as far as I understand, they kind of brought the technique of leaf casting to the comic book conservation world in a sense. And so what it is basically you're taking paper pulp and pre-existing paper. It can be anything, although I use acid-free cardstock and something called cotton linters. And you just put it into a blender with some clean water, and you take that out, and you can add something called formation aid, which kind of gives it a little bit of a less surface tension, I guess you could say. But anyways, and then you reintroduce that into the voids of the page that you're working on the wrap that you're working in, and it creates a bond with the paper, a hydro bond, and when it's dried, it essentially has the feel and look of the original paper. As much as you can. Thank you. That's right. I've shown the blender a couple of times. When you're doing this, you don't have to. So CGC or grading companies in general, they don't care if it color matches, because the point again with conservation is not so much the aesthetics, it's the structure, the structural integrity of the book. So you don't have to color match it with the wrap that you're working on. But if you want to go that extra mile, which I try to do, you kind of want to get as close as you possibly can to color matching. And color matching means, for me, finding cardstock that sometimes mixing different types of colored cardstock in a blender in order to get what I kind of think looks right. And the process is kind of involved because you have to, when it's wet, you can't really tell how close it is until it's dry. And so sometimes you have to like dry little pucks or whatnot, and kind of figure out, okay, this is close to what I want. So yeah.
I'm glad you got into that, because I was wondering, I was like, how did you color match? It looked so good.
Yeah, well, now the professor Peter Lacci, thank you, by the way. He actually gets super scientific with it. He uses a color spectrometer, and he puts it into Photoshop and gets the colors all matched perfectly, and then knows exact down to the milligram of how much of paper content he's supposed to use, and it's fascinating, and he can do perfect on color. Another conservator, Don Carter, he doesn't have a YouTube channel, unfortunately, but he also does a lot of conservation work, and they're both doing that kind of stuff. But more of the old school, doing it by eye kind of thing. Jerry the Jitterbug, Dr. Paul Kosnick, Larry, myself, we're kind of working in that, still doing it by eye, and I'm getting close to where I think it. Usually this latest project I'm working on is actually I'm really, really happy with. So
nice. Do you have like recipes for?
Yeah, I do. I actually, so in fact, that's kind of how I kind of really, when I got into the comic book conservation community, I was just taking notes of everything I was watching. Dr. Paul was really good, but his channel, again, Liberty Hill Comics, he actually does a lot of step-by-step kind of stuff. And so I was kind of taking notes on that. And so then I posted my notes to the Facebook group, and I was like, I don't know if this is helpful to anyone else. And Dr. Paul was like, this is actually great. We should actually sticky this. And so they did, but then it got them thinking, well, you know what, maybe we should write a book about this. And so they ended up writing the book based on like the note taking, I guess I was doing, so it was kind of nice to have a creative influence on that whole sort of thing, but I still use my little, cheat sheet, like, oh, okay, I gotta do this now. And I gotta put this much in this here, so yeah, there's still a lot of that going on. But you do it enough. Sometimes you don't really need the cheat sheet that much anymore. So
yeah, that makes sense. And how durable is it? Because I mean, it looked like when you're paging through it, it seems pretty. It's pretty stable.
Yeah, leaf casting. It's very durable. It's as durable as the paper that the comic book is printed. It's as durable.
Okay.
So the bond can be a little weak sometimes, and so sometimes you have to reinforce that a little bit. Again, I'll reinforce that with something like methyl cellulose, which kind of gets into the paper fibers itself and absorbs into there. Another technique I've been working on, this is another development, is taking brittle pages and reviving them through processes, chemicals like bestine and I'm sorry, not bestine, betaine and glycerin. And I've taken a book. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, this book. This book was. I have several videos on this. It was. This is again another war book, 1944-ish, I think, and it was completely falling apart. Literally, as you would lift a wrap, it would break off in your hands. The spine was completely gone. It was absolutely shot, and through the processes of using like betaine and leaf casting, I was able to bring the pages back up from brittle back to supple again. So you can actually flick through this, read it, and I think it would probably even get a non-brittle grade if it was sent to CGC. So
nice. And
that's awesome.
Is there like a marketplace where you go buy all these chemicals, or how do you acquire this stuff?
Amazon mostly. There are actual. So most of it I get through Amazon, but there are paper making, a lot of paper making websites. So there's a whole Japanese paper making craft world out there, and so that's where I get a lot of my like cotton linters and certain organic chemicals that I use, and they've been doing it for ages, just actual making paper, whatever it is, and that's a whole world. In fact, I think that Professor Peter Olachi, he actually is delving more and more into actual just paper making in general. So
yeah, that looked incredible too. Those colors were also popping. So
thank you. That's what shocked me about that book, was that the colors remained as vivid. If you watch the videos I have on that, I have like a playlist. I was actually bleeding color reds a lot, and I was really kind of like freaking out a little bit, like, oh man, this is going to look terrible. And somehow it stayed together, and I was like, and when I was done, I was like, man, these colors still pop. I can't believe it. So sometimes you get really fortunate. I have a few other books. I don't know if you want to see some of the other stuff I've done or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I did this book as well. This was just really kind of dirty. Now, a lot of these books are by a company called Meador. They were a competitor in the 40s with like DC and Timely and whatnot. This, again, had a split spine. This was one of the first books I ever did leaf casting to. This back was filthy, so I cleaned that up and was really very, very happy to get a 3.0 out of this.
And that has that silver thing up top that you mentioned on
Yep,
the label?
right here, the gray. Yep, conservation. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I see now how it looks a little bit different.
That's another reason why a lot of people prefer the conserved grade over a restored or qualified, because it has that look of being a universal book, but and then I did this was my last book. I think this is my second to last book that I did before I worked on I worked on a book with Johnny Comic Stuff, a Green Lantern book, and then I did the book for Brandon. But before that, I did this book. This book again, a complete mess. If you saw it in its before state, it was ripped all over the place. There was just nothing here, and so did a little bit of leaf casting, cover cleaning, and even though the grade is a 2.5, a little bit lower than I like, I was again thrilled to get above a 1.0 and not restored. And then this book I did it was initially a 2.5 and I
Holy smokes.
Weird Science got to a 6.0.
Nice.
When I first started working on it, so this was all colored in. Some kid had scribbled in the Weird Science label, and I thought, oh, it's a 2.5 because of that. I can fix that. I just erase it, no big deal. Well, lo and behold, the corner here was all chewed up. I didn't realize that till I started working on it, and it started literally falling apart on me. And I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? So this is before I started leaf casting. I just used a process of tear seals and whatnot, and was able to get it back together again and bring it up from a 2.5 to a 6.0. So yeah.
Nice. Good work.
That's awesome.
Thank you. So, and then the book I'm working on right now, it's this one is, sorry about the audio there. The Blonde Phantom. So this is the cover. It's cleaned and everything. And I've already done quite a bit of work to it. The wraps have all been cleaned. I've done tear seals to everything, but it was missing its original cover. It was missing its back cover. It had no back cover. And this book is pretty hard to get. It's fairly valuable. The Blonde Phantom is a fairly desirable book. So finding another Blonde Phantom book that only had the front cover and the internal wraps, but no back cover, or had the back cover, was going to be really hard. So I found, this is by Timely, which is Marvel. In fact, the book actually has a whole chapter on the Submariner. So I found a back cover for a Mighty Mouse comic. Let's see if I have it here. Maybe I don't. I found a Mighty Mouse comic from the same era, same year, around the same month, that was missing its front cover. So it had the internal wraps and it had a back cover and it had the ads exactly matching the ads that this one had.
Huh.
So I removed the back cover and it will be married to this front cover to make it a complete book. And again, CGC and other grading companies accept married covers, married wraps, and will place it into a conserved status. So,
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
Cool. So,
Yeah.
out of curiosity, of all the techniques that you perform, which one do you feel has like the highest likelihood for causing damage to the book if you had to reverse it? Which one makes you the most nervous?
Tape removal, without a question.
Okay.
Removing tape is a tape removal and glue removal, but you see more tape than you do glue. So and it really depends on the type of glue as well. But tape, especially old tape, it starts just chewing into the book. That's another reason for conservation is, the main reason for conservation really is, again, if you don't fix some of these books, they will continue to rot essentially. And so when you have tape on these books and you don't get them off, eventually they'll just start further dissolving the book. But it's really, really tricky. You can use a chemical called Bestine. Bestine, basically it breaks up the glue underneath the carrier and allows you to get kind of like a palette knife Let me see if I have one. Well, something like this or whatever. Allows you to get a palette knife underneath the tape carrier and then slowly lift it up. And then I'll use something like this eraser guard to kind of clean up the residue. And it's really, really difficult because depending on how tricky the tape is, it's just really, really, really hard to get off. And if it doesn't come off cleanly, then you will start bringing up a lot of graphics, and that's just a nightmare when that starts happening. You start seeing like the color lifting with it, and you're like, oh man, it's so heartbreaking. Other times, sometimes you'll hit a process where just applying, but this happened to me once, and it hasn't happened to me since. But I put Bestine, which is what I use to remove the tape, onto a book that had been heavily water damaged, and it just bled the colors. It was a sensation. It's an old Wonder Woman comic, and it was just bleeding like I stuck it or something. And I was like, oh man, this really sucks. So yeah, there's a lot of adventures. You're always kind of freaking out a little bit when you're working with tape. So
I can imagine.
yeah.
So how does your process work? Like somebody contacts you, say, hey, I have a book, and you get the book, and you get it, you look at it. How do you decide what you do, and then what steps do you follow to get it
Yeah,
to
honestly,
some of those?
most of the books I've been working on have been my own. I've been avoiding touching other people's books because I've just been so, in my heart, it's like, it kills me when I do even the slightest amount of damage to my own books, and I could not even imagine doing that to someone else's. But I have been starting to work on other people's books. So, for instance, I worked again with Johnny Comic Stuff. He's a presser as well. He does dry cleaning and pressing, and he's really, really good. And he had this Green Lantern book, and it was the like 3/4 of the spine was gone. Had rust had just chewed right through it. Had massive water damage, and it was a early Streak the Wonder Dog, which is I guess Green Lantern, the original Green Lantern's faithful companion. It was his first appearance. Also an early work by Alex Toth, who he's kind of like your artist from the Golden Age, or from actually the Silver Age. But he worked initially in the Golden Age. Anyway, when he sent that to me, he was like, look, there's not much more you can do there's not much worse you can do to this book. It's already as bad as it's going to get. I'm not worried about it. And it's at a price point where, I think it was under $250 or something like that. He's like, if something happens, it happens. So, he trusted me, and so I trusted him, and I got on working on it, and it came out really well. So he actually sent it off to CGC, and I think we'll be doing a live reveal of that book this Sunday on his channel. So and then Chonko of Chonko's Comics, he will be sending me something. He's got a Brazilian book that he'll be sending me here pretty soon. Jason, do you work on one book start to finish, or do you work on multiple books at the same time? I've tried to do the multiple book thing, but because there's a lot of waiting around, I'm often waiting for books to dry or wraps to dry. So I have done the multiple book situation, but I find it just easier to concentrate on one at a time. So yeah, I am beginning to work more and more on other people's books, mostly in collaboration. And right now it's in a situation where, hey, I just want to make sure that you guys know that, that it can't be a book that you desperately love and it's, a fortune. I'm not touching any like Captain America ones anytime soon, So and yeah, so and I when I was watching Matt in his show with you guys, he had talked about how for him a lot of books he had gotten to the point where a book is a book, and that's how the professionals do think about it. Phil from Phantom Restoration, he does this professionally as well, and he's constantly working on like, early Batmans and, books, massive, $100,000 books and stuff that would just have me quivering just touching it, never mind like working on it, putting it into a aqueous bath or anything. But to him, it's the same thing. It's I treat this 90s image comic the same way I treat this $1,000 or 2,000 or $100,000 golden age book. So a book is a book to him. So it's really very professional and not something I can't do that yet. So
Well, I eventually would like to get on that list.
okay.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but the work that you did, at some point in the conversation, you mentioned how people tend to stay away from golden age books because either A, they're expensive,
Yeah.
or two, when they're affordable, they're really beat up.
Yeah.
So what I saw you do on Brandon's channel
Mhm.
made me want to get a golden age book. I hope it was here today. It's Forbidden Worlds number 28, so that
Cool.
I could show you.
Yeah, it's an ACG book. Yeah. Right.
But it's got a detached cover.
Mhm.
It didn't cost even $50,
Okay.
but I really wanted to see, part of that process and hopefully maybe even a collaboration between channels.
Yeah. Yeah. Take some
If
pictures
you're
of
up
it and
for
send
it.
it my way. Yeah. Let me look at it. For sure. I mean,
Awesome.
I worked on that. Again, the Brand's book was an ACG as well. So I kind of know the temperament of the paper now. I know what I can and cannot get away with. Yeah, I think we could work something out. That'd be great.
All right.
In fact, as far as I plan on actually doing a video here because I don't always just do conservation videos. Sometimes we'll do like whatever's on the top of my head kind of thing. But I was planning on doing a video on like geez, when you open the door for everybody. Yeah, I'm beginning to find that out. That's okay. I
Matt
don't mind.
knows. Mr. 9.8 knows all about that now.
Collaboration is great stuff. Gets your name in people's heads. More and more. I was going to do a video on really cool golden age books that I think that anyone could afford. Not just because there are a number of videos that are out there like, oh, you can afford this old Western comic, or you can afford this funny animals comic. It's golden age. No, I want to show you some really cool golden age, like horror, golden age sci-fi, golden age fantasy, that kind of stuff. And I'm going to work through a list and I'm going to use my comic shop to kind of like show you, these prices are attainable by anybody. Anyone can get into golden age, if you know what to look for.
Yeah, that'd be great because, I'm interested, obviously, just the history of the books sometimes, even if it's not just the title, but just seeing, the world through a different lens of back then, how people tend to view things, which is obviously very different than nowadays.
Absolutely. That I take that archivist part or archivist part of my name seriously because these books they mean something to me as a part of Western pulp culture, American pulp culture. And I think that, these need to be treasured. They need to be valued. They need to be stewarded. And I want everyone to see these. I want the future to see these. I want, your children's children to see these, So we got to take care of them because a lot of them are falling apart. And these golden age books, I have a couple of golden age books in my collection. There are seven of them in the world that we know of. That's it. You'll always see these videos pop up now where people are saying, comics are not rare. There is no such thing as a rare comic. I got some rare comics, and it's easy to find fairly rare comics from the golden age.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good motto to have because it is history.
Yes,
it is.
Whether you like it or not, you can't disagree with it. It is history. It's part of the history of pop culture, of comic books. even the country and the world,
Oh
the
yeah,
times that we lived in at that time. So
there's so much I learned from these comics as far as the attitudes of people who lived in that era, not just the clothing and the cars they drove and that kind of thing, but really just how they thought, and it's fascinating, and it's educational, and yeah, it's we got to remember it, because if we don't, we bad things can happen. So
That's very true.
Mhm.
Well, before we come to a close here, Jason, do you have any words of wisdom that you'd like to share for anyone aspiring to be future conservationist?
Yeah, work on 100 books. No, I don't worry about making mistakes. Buy cheap books initially, and if you have any questions, come to me. Come to other conservators. We love sharing our knowledge, our wisdom. With the things that we've discovered. Join the Facebook group, the conservation community there, and start slow. You don't have to jump into leaf casting right away. I wouldn't. Start with pressing and dry cleaning and get the fundamentals down, at least somewhat, even if you're not doing 100 books. So
Awesome. And where can people find you?
you can find me on Instagram at Archivist Adrift. I think it's all one word, and also here on YouTube at Archivist Adrift.
Awesome. Go check them out.
Yeah, go check them out. Subscribe,
follow.
Follow a lot of the people that are in chat. Thank you, Longbox Legionnaires. Anything you have coming up that you'd want to plug before we depart?
I will be having a video out here pretty soon on this book that I'm working on. Even though the cover was detached completely, I should have that wrapped up, I think, by the end of this week. So I should hopefully have a video out by the end of this week as well. And then Johnny has been talking about doing a live reveal of the book that he sent to CGC, the Green Lantern book. And then look forward to future shows with where I'll be working on some material by a comic book artist named Lawson Wallace, as well as a future collaboration with Chonko of Chonko's Comics.
Great.
Awesome. Going to be busy.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Jason, thank you so much for not only the work that you do, but also just for hanging out with us and sharing your knowledge. It's been great chatting, and I've learned a ton, and I'm sure everyone watching this has too. So
it was a lot of fun, and I hope we get to hang out again.
Likewise.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, until next time, keep flipping those pages.